Hello and welcome back to Always Ours, Chapter 8, Fallout. Summary. The author of the journal decides to make some changes again. Splinter is not very happy about that, but some things can't be changed. Well, that was bonkers. I stare at my journal, pen hovering over the pages, my hands still shake from whatever the hell that was. Leo turning into an actual dragon, Splinter calling him son, the whole stadium going into chaos, and through it all, I just sat there, overlooked. Again! But now I know something nobody else does. I can change things. I can rewrite what happens. The question is, how far can I push it? My pen touches paper without conscious thought. The one-on-one battles conclude with unexpected results. Third place goes to Shoto Todoroki after a hard-fought match. Second place, I hesitate. First place would be suspicious, wouldn't it? Someone would notice if I suddenly went from background character to champion. But second place goes to me. After an impressive showing that finally gets me the recognition I deserve. My heart pounds. Good. I want to write first place so badly, but I need to be smart about this. And in the biggest upset of the festival, first place goes to Hitoshi Shinzo from General Studies, whose improved combat skills and strategic use of his quirk caught everyone off guard. I pause, grinning. Oh, that'll ruffle some feathers. Let's see how the Hero Course Elite handle being beaten by someone they overlooked. The familiar warm sensation spreads through my chest as the words take hold. Splinter would not let anyone close. Leonardo lay limp in his arms, his chest barely moving with shallow, ragged breaths. The boy's life force was nearly gone, just as it had been the last time he'd accessed the dragon form. Around them, the stadium descended into a panic-fueled chaos of hero staff and frantic onlookers. The hero who'd turned into a dragon and was now back to a woman kept her distance, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. I just want to see if he's okay, she called out. My first quirk manifestation was violent as well. I understand what this must be like, but I need to help him. But Splinter was deaf to all reason. He crouched over his son, ears flattened against his skull, teeth bared in a feral snarl. Every instinct screamed, protect. This world's tournament, this reckless spectacle, had nearly killed Leonardo again. You cannot help him, Splinter snarled. No one can help him. Leave us. Recovery Girl hovered nearby, her bag in hand, but Splinter waved her off with a vicious swipe of his staff. He'd watched his son die once from this transformation, and he would not watch it happen again. He pulled Leonardo closer, pressing his forehead against the boy's. Leonardo, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As soon as you are better, I'll grab your brothers, and we will leave this world. The daimyo asked me once if I wanted to live in his world, and I turned him down because I was too stubborn, too proud. But I cannot go through this again. No matter how pretty this world is, no matter how it makes you four happy, I will be the bad guy if I have to, all to ensure all of our safety. There was a flash of brilliant white light. Splinter blinked, suddenly standing in front of Class 1A. Students were chatting excitedly about their internship placements. He looked down at his paws, which were no longer cradling his dying son. His heart hammered in his chest as he scanned the room. Sensei? Leonardo's voice came from the back of the room. Splinter spun, hammering. His son sat upright in his chair, looking perfectly healthy. You seem distracted. Everything all right? Leonardo, Splinter's voice cracked. How are you feeling? Leo shrugged. Upset I lost to Raph from 1B, but those are the breaks. Why? Splinter's heart sank into his stomach, a cold, heavy stone. Leonardo didn't remember. He didn't remember the tournament, the transformation, or nearly dying. He didn't remember the promise Splinter had just made. He'd lost his memories again. But now he had a clue. The person doing this had to be close enough to witness everything, close enough to change their very presence in this world. Someone in his class, someone who had been content to let him live in ignorance until they'd nearly gotten Leonardo killed. Splinter's claws tightened around his walking stick. He'd been willing to accept this strange new life because his son seemed happy and safe. But now someone had weaponized his memories against his family. "Excuse me, children," Splinter said, his voice deceptively calm. He went to an unused storage room that he'd discovered weeks ago. Once inside, he screamed his absolute fury, throwing boxes and tearing at the walls with his claws. He would find them. He would make them pay. He would make them fix this whole debacle. He returned to class with a quiet, burning fury. It would have to wait until after internships. What the heck was he supposed to do about this mess? The second Leonardo transformed into a dragon, Netsu had cut the feed to the live transmission. He knew what would happen if it got out to villains, civilians, or even the HPSC. Not only would Leonardo likely disappear into a training program like the one that had developed Hawks, but Izuku's display of a secondary powerful quirk would likely see him being taken as well. After that, he pulled a copy of the footage to his own shielded, mostly quirk-proofed archive. He needed to figure out exactly what the hell had happened without anyone else getting their hands on the information. Next, he'd given word to his staff that all of the civilians and heroes in the stadium were to be kept there until further notice. This would ensure no one could tell the villains or the HPSC what they had witnessed. Finally, he rushed to his office to submit paperwork. He'd heard Splinter calling Leonardo son, and that implied a weak spot. Splinter was not technically a civilian, at least not yet. Netsu could easily backdate the application. He'd long since infiltrated that part of the HPSC, and if nothing else, seeing a hero's signature on the application would hurry it along, because he knew what would happen if he left it alone. If they could take Splinter to make Leonardo do what they wanted, they would. So he pulled up the relevant file. All that was left was to click the last box: citizenship, guardianship, or marriage. His paw hovered over the box. There was a flash of white light. The internship papers were scattered in front of him. When did that happen? He yawned, stretched, and then came back with a cup of tea. The sports festival had been truly odd. He never expected someone like Hitoshi Shinso to win the whole thing. Not that he was biased, or didn't think people with villainous quirks could win. Aizawa had proven that wrong during his run. Nor was it because he wanted Izuku to win, but because it didn't make any sense. He remembered Shinso from the entrance exam. The boy had done well for having such weak, noodly arms, managing to get a total of 12 points before huffing, sitting down, and giving up. The boy could have managed to get in the same way Izuku had, by rescue points, or by the way Leonardo had, by teaming up with another examinee. But no, the boy had just given up. And that was why it was strange that the boy had won the whole thing. There was something he could do about it, though. He knew Aizawa had less responsibility now that he was head of security and law and ethics teacher, both of which started late in the afternoon. That allowed Aizawa more time to sleep. It would do Aizawa good to have a protege, and the boy would benefit from learning some of the hard lessons from Aizawa before he went out thinking his quirk would always carry him. A ping sounded from his computer. Congratulations. The HPSC was congratulating him. For what? He opened the email. The HPSC is happy to congratulate you on your nuptials. A certificate was attached, a marriage certificate for himself and Hamato Splinter. When had he done that? How had he done that? Certainly he didn't hate the idea, but he'd been content with taking things slow, and it was working. Why would he have risked a setback by doing this? Then again, he could better protect Splinter this way. The HBSC knows better than to mess with the things Natsu considers his. It didn't bother him as much as he thought, the idea of being married in the legal sense to someone he liked. Logically, he knew this was that odd quirk he'd been hit with, messing with his emotions still. Logically, he knew he should say something. He had been compromised, and now he had altered someone else's life without their permission. He should fix this. He should fix this. He should fix this. He should fix this. But he didn't want to. Was it really so bad that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with someone just like his kids? Just like any human? Was it really so wrong? He looked at the certificate. Some part of him was horrified that he was printing it off, putting it in his drawer to frame later. Some part of himself was horrified that he was finding that he was totally okay with this. He couldn't bring himself to change it. He really should say something. He really should, but he wouldn't. "What's that for?" May asked, leaning over his shoulder. Donatello jumped, nearly knocking over his coffee. "I have no idea. It was just there, on my work table." He stared at the intricate diagram, geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with meaning he couldn't grasp. "I don't remember drawing it." "Maybe you should stop sleeping in the lab," May said gently. "Remember what happened when I was too tired and I almost took out half the class with that explosion? Power Loader's right. We need actual sleep in actual beds." "You're right. Thank you." But even as he nodded agreement, the drawing called to him. Something about those patterns felt desperately important, like a word on the tip of his tongue that couldn't quite form. He couldn't stop staring at them. The patterns appeared without warning, spiraling up his arms in brilliant orange light before fading like they'd never been there. "You feeling all right, Mikey?" Lunchross asked, not looking up from his prep work. "You seem distracted." "Sorry, Chef, it's just..." Mikey flexed his fingers, watching for the pattern to return. "These markings keep appearing on my arms. They feel familiar, but I've never seen them before, and I'm not old enough for tattoos anyway." "Don't let it affect your work. The students expect great cuisine." "Yes, Chef." But the patterns continued to swirl beneath his skin, warm and alive and utterly impossible to ignore. "Did you get tattoos after the festival, Raph? That's sick!" Kamakuri exclaimed. Raphael had no idea what his classmate was talking about till he looked at his arms. Raised markings covered his forearms like brands, not tattoos, but scars burned deep into his skin. As he watched, they flared bright red before fading. "Dude, was that part of your quirk? That's so manly!" Tetsu chimed in. Raph looked helplessly at Kendo, who had always been the responsible one in Class 1B. "I've never seen marks like these before, Raph." "It's not a tattoo," his voice cracked. "I'd remember getting one. At least, I think I would." The patterns pulsed under his skin like living fire, and panic clawed at his throat. This wasn't normal. This wasn't his quirk. So why did it feel so familiar? The markings on his arm were the least of Leo's concerns. His scales had changed overnight, harder than diamond, arranged in patterns that definitely hadn't been there before. And beneath his shell, he could feel something new, a small, tufted tail that made his stomach turn with inexplicable dread. His nails had grown sharper too. Everything about his body felt different, changed, wrong somehow. But worse than the physical changes was the hollow ache in his chest, like he'd lost something precious and couldn't remember what it was. He'd see Recovery Girl after internships. This had to be some sort of quirk evolution. It had to be. Another change, a significant one. The activation of Black Whip, a quirk to be he recognized from the fifth wielder of One for All, had been intriguing enough. But the Hamato boy's transformation into something approaching his own level of power, that was unprecedented. He'd never paid much attention to transformational quirks, dismissing them as flashy but limited. Heteromorphic and transformation quirks had always seemed beneath his notice, relics of an earlier, cruder era of quirk development. But that power, that had been something else entirely, something that made even him pause. Yes, he could understand someone rewriting reality to avoid facing such a force. "Tamura," he called, settling back into his chair with renewed interest. "I have another task for you. I want you to investigate this Hamato Leonardo more thoroughly, and keep watch for our mysterious manipulator." The game was becoming far more interesting than he'd anticipated. "They say power corrupts," I say to myself, the pen hovering over my open journal. "They're absolutely right about that. But who better to have this power than someone who will use it responsibly?" I stared at the words I'd written, the ones that had changed everything. Second place goes to me. First place goes to Hitachi Shinso. The power had felt good, intoxicating. I knew I'd done something wrong. Splinter would be fine. Leonardo would be fine. Everything would be exactly the way I wrote it. My pen touches the paper again. Yes, someday they will all thank me. I'm doing this for them, really. The sports festival was a disaster waiting to happen. Splinter looked like he was ready to have a heart attack, and Izuku was probably in trouble for his new quirk. By changing the events, I've saved them from a lot of heartache. This is a good thing. I'm a good person. I just need to keep this a secret. No one needs to know I'm the one pulling the strings. It's better this way. After all, what they don't know can't hurt them, right? And that's the end of that chapter.